Good morning.
Sorry, I was muted. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, exhausted after this trip that I took. Boy,
Where'd you go?
to the reservation at Winnebago and the Omaha in Nebraska, Macy,
Oh,
Nebraska, north. And then dealing with my dad in Crescent, Iowa. I was born and raised in Council Bluffs, Iowa. So
oh, cool.
my dad is not doing too well. So I had to go back and
Bad.
take care of him.
I know I feel like so many of us are at that point in life, right? And it's
Yeah.
hard.
So I'm reviewing this thing, and I wasn't able to open the Weston Sampson thing, but I don't know if you had a chance to read through that. I've worked with Weston Sampson before, and they're pretty thorough on that review. I mean, there's a lot of really good things in there.
Yep, we had our meeting with them yesterday, and it was very helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an interesting project. So so learn more from the developer. Andy's online.
And Kathy's here. Hey, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy. Are you in? You look like you're home. You're muted though. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm in Mansfield. I'm feet away from you.
And I think Soyeon is back too, finally, from her many travels all over the world.
Everybody's got it. Now, it depends on what you have. Some cameras have one custom mode, some have two.
So I just need to be reminded, I have to say it out loud because most of the time I remember when I say it out loud to record this meeting, to press record. So.
It automatically switches to ball. Automatically sets it to F11 ISO 100 with a 2-second timer. I never have to mess with my data. Imagine how it would change your landscape view if you never have to worry, do I have the right?
I just forwarded you an email from those, they want to go to dinner, but they want to stay here Saturday night. I thought it was okay, but I didn't answer it yet.
Okay.
Who do I hear in the background?
Possible that's noise in my office.
Okay. So wait just a few more minutes for, so Andy and Eric, oh, it looks like some other folks from your team. You go by Andy, right? Not Andrew?
Yep. Andy would be great.
Okay, great.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'm just going to check on Soyeon to see, want to check. It looks like we have all of our members of the design review panel here. So I'm going to begin the meeting. This is a public meeting, so I'm going to record it, and then we can do introductions. Okay, well, I guess maybe we were recording. So good morning. This is the August 15th, 2023 meeting of the PZC Design Review Panel. And this, we don't necessarily have a chair because this is an advisory committee. So I do have the minutes of your July 10th meeting. So I don't know if the members got a chance to review that. And I just want to make sure that I did accurately capture folks' comments. The public hearing for 497 Middle Turnpike has been closed. However, the public hearing for the villages at Four Corners has not closed. So if you want to review those minutes, make sure that they are accurately reflected for the record.
I'm sorry, I have not reviewed them.
Okay. Well, do you want to wait to approve them until the next meeting, which I don't know when you're going to be meeting because you meet only as needed,
Yeah.
or do you want to? I mean, the way
I'm glad to abstain if Jeff and Sonia are ready to do so.
I have read the minutes, and I think the comments that we provided were well reflected there, mostly about the slope issues and connectivity issues, and some of those layout plan. I think it's good to go.
Great. And Kathy, so only So-Young and Kathy were at the meeting. So I think we'll just sort of table that, Kathy, till you have a chance, but just so that your comments, if your comments are not accurately reflected in those minutes, you can just send me an email and I'll make sure that your comments are reflected as an individual into the public hearing record. Okay.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't get to it.
Yeah, that's okay. So we will just start with introductions. The design review panel is, it's a panel that is appointed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And maybe the members could start by introducing themselves, and then we can go around to the applicant team, and then the applicant can do a brief presentation of their project, and we can I did include the comments from our peer reviewers, Weston and Sampson. The applicant team has reviewed them with the architect from Weston and Sampson. So if the design review panel wants to kind of review them, review them in the meeting quickly and then ask questions, and we can handle things that way. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jeff, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Brown. I'm a resident in town, but I'm also an associate project manager at Tyson Kim Partners here in Hartford.
And Kathy?
Hi, Kathy Dorgan. I'm also a Mansfield resident and an architect and planner with a practice here in Mansfield.
And So-Young?
Good morning, everyone. My name is So-Hyun Park. I'm assistant professor of the Department of Plant Science and Landscape Architecture at University of Connecticut. I am teaching environmental planning, planting design, and most the planning related courses.
So I'll let Tom, do you want to introduce the applicant team, or who from the applicant team would like to begin?
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I'll turn it over to them. Tom Cody with Robinson and Cole, legal counsel to the developer applicant, but I will turn it over to the design team to continue.
Morning, everybody. My name's Andy Savoy. I'm with a company called Core Spaces. We are a large student housing developer based out of Chicago. And on the line with me, I have Alyssa Galina from Core Spaces. I also have Eric Wright, who's from a company called Wilmerite based in upstate New York. They are a co-developer on this deal with us. So we've been working diligently for the past 6 to 8 months, coming up with what we're about to show you and kind of lining those ducks. We also have our architect, design architect, Antunovich. So you'll see Jeff Salisco and Brian Gaffney from the Antunovich team on the line, as well as our civil engineer and landscape, Langen. So Kristen, Richie from the Langen team are on the line. And then Eric Wright is with Wilma Wright, who is our co-developer. And so, Brian, if you could share your screen, I have a few slides where I'm going to tell you kind of who we are, what generally we're proposing, where it is, and then I'm going to turn it over to the Antunovich team to actually get into the details and the particulars of the design. And so we can just go to the next slide, Brian, and that's just a summary of what I just told you, who the team is. The one firm that's not present on this call is Newman. That they will be the architect of record for this deal. And so Core Spaces has been active over a decade. We've developed or purchased over 30,000 beds of purpose-built, privately owned student housing projects, and that's all over the country. And we have about 35,000 beds in the pipeline, so we're a very active developer all over the country. And we've done many large deals kind of similar to what we're proposing here. And then Wilma Wright, I think Eric might be in the car, but Wilma Wright has developed over $1 billion in projects. They have a much more diverse kind of project list than we do. They've done resorts and casinos, but they've also done some student housing. And they've been involved with this site for years, and Core only recently got involved this year. And so you see a few of our representative projects down at the bottom. We can turn it over just a little bit. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. So a little bit about our business model, just in case you're unfamiliar with the concept. So we develop privately owned kind of purpose-built student housing, and we'll rent to anybody who wants to sign a lease, but our leases are a little unique in that they are by the bed and not by the unit. And so as part of the lease, you get a bedroom and a kind of a lockable room, sometimes with an ensuite bathroom. But for a 4-bedroom unit, for example, you'd have 4 different leases, basically. And so it's very similar to how a dorm would work, but privately owned, privately operated. Core Spaces owns a management company that provides the management services for our portfolio. You can see in this map, you know, we have projects across the country, and we operate under a brand called Hub. And so we have, you know, probably 20 different Hub branded projects across the country. And so a few unique things, you know, the leases kind of coincide with the academic year. So they start in August and in July, all of them. All the units are fully furnished, and the buildings are heavily programmed with study areas and amenities that we think would be attractive to students. And then move-ins happen all kind of in one weekend before classes start. So kind of a unique product type, just to make sure that that is out there. The location of the site is, I just basically clipped the zoning map to show you where the site's located and why we think it's an appropriate use for this site. And so the gray is the University of Connecticut's campus. And so the site is practically landlocked by the university. The plan of conservation and development kind of contemplates development at this site as being kind of a transition to campus with business and residential uses that support students. And so I think, you know, of all the sites in Mansfield, this is a very appropriate use for this particular site, given its adjacency to campus. And so as we can go to the next slide. Just getting into some site conditions. So we have both sides of Eagleville Road. We're going to refer to Site A as the south parcel of the parcel that's south of Eagleville Road. Site B is the parcel north of Eagleville Road. Eagleville Brook runs underneath Eagleville Road at this stretch, so both sites slope downward towards Eagleville Road. There's about 2 levels of grade change down towards Eagleville Road. Site A is basically a wetland at the bottom of a hill, so it's a very challenging site. As I said, 2 levels of grade change there, and we can only really connect to Eagleville on the right half of the site. But there is frontage on King Hill Road as well, and that's currently improved with a small retail strip center that has Subway and Sam's convenience store. Site B is a commercial building that is the current home of Husky's Tavern. And they will actually be relocating to Site A as part of the project and kind of staying involved in the project. So we can go to the next slide. My last slide before I turn it over to Antunovic. So what you're going to see is, this image shows the initial renderings we presented. What you'll see going forward in this presentation is imagery. We have responded to a few of the peer review comments that we've gotten in the meantime. But generally speaking, just to get a rough idea of the size and scale, it's 450 units roughly between two different sites. It's about half and half on each site. You're looking at 5-story buildings. It's 5 stories of wood over concrete podium parking. So there is a parking deck underneath each building. And we have about 13,000, almost 14,000 square feet of commercial space, about half of which is the relocated Huskies. We do have space for a few other tenants, and we're in conversations with those tenants to see if they want to stay on site and part of the project as we redevelop the space. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian. He can get into the particulars of the design, how we've conceptualized everything, and kind of run you through it.
Great. Thank you, Andy, and thank you, everybody, for your time. Just to give everybody a quick heads up, like Andy had said, we've been responding to some of the planning and zoning comments as we go, and we have been further developing the project since probably you last saw it in our original submission. Nothing major has changed. The massing has stayed the same, but we've begun to continue to articulate the exterior of the building. And like Andy said, the site is situated in that northwest kind of corner of the main campus, basically flanking the two sites, flank Eagleville Road. Eagleville Road being kind of the low point of the site, and the two backsides, Site A, King Hill Road being the high side, and then obviously the parking lots and the university property to the north is the high side. And this has a lag. So I wanted to start off just kind of giving you the overview of where we started, maybe a 2-3 minute presentation. We kind of looked at how the town started. A lot of New England started around mill buildings, textile mills, paper mills, those types of things. And there is a beautiful elegance to a lot of those buildings, a very rhythmic method to the window openings, to the structure of the buildings, and just a beautiful scale to them. They broke them down based on function and daylight, but it created a very rhythmic and very elegant building. So what we also started to look at was how some of those things started to replicate themselves in more of a modern sense. And thinking about the textiles and the paper mills, the idea of variation within repetition was kind of a quality that we started to take away and start to articulate the exterior skin of these buildings so that we could start to provide some variables, but at the same time, keep a regularity, keep the massing understandable, those types of things. And we looked at projects in and around the University of Connecticut, as well as some of the vernacular that you see in the surrounding areas. And these are kind of some additional ones that we were initially taking a look at. And of course, obviously the culture. The culture is extremely important. It is the reason we're all here. And so we didn't want to let go of that. So a lot of this building is about actually engaging and trying to make some type of a connection to the university, as well as supporting the universities, both the culture and the academics. And so we kind of ended with a precedent where it was about creating a set of masses, create a set of blocks similar to kind of those original mill buildings, and weaving in similar to kind of the textiles, a little bit of variation within a very repetitious element. So what I'll do is I'm going to actually walk through Site A first, which is the south of Eagleville Road building, and we'll go through that and we'll just kind of highlight what the amenities are, the plans, those types of things, and what we've progressed on the elevations. And then we'll move on to site B, where we can, it's a variation of a similar theme. It's a different type of building, yet we've tried to employ the same design approaches. And so our palette of materials, just to kind of start off, is kind of a beautiful elegance and simplicity, similar to kind of again, kind of trending back to those mill buildings, where we have a base that is made of masonry brick. We're using a hardy panel in a vertically oriented siding. We also have an ephes panel that we're also creating joints and control joints in a vertically oriented pattern. And then we're going to actually use kind of a warmer metal panel cladding. We're showing kind of a copper-esque color right here that is also going to accentuate some of the entry points of the buildings.
Can you go back and point out where those different surfaces are and how they correspond to the colors on the building?
Absolutely. So as you can see here, this is site B is on the bottom, site A is on the top.
Yeah.
The masonry is the base of the building, so it kind of wraps the buildings on both of them. The darker vertically oriented hardy panel is actually some of the kind of, we call them the hyphens or the gaps or the recesses within the building. So you can kind of see we started to try to break down the masses using some of that darker material there, as well as kind of within the recesses of the courtyards. The kind of light warm gray that you see here, which is number 2, is the lighter parts of the project that you can see there. And then finally, this kind of warm metallic color that we're showing is actually accentuating some of the main entry points. Site A is actually on King Hill Road, and where site B is actually on Eagleville Road. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit. So what shows as a lighter white is actually number 2. And the highlighting of 4, I guess, is in general covered with trees in your renderings.
On B, we'll go into some further renderings so
Okay.
that we have some better close-ups of both site A and site B to kind of see where that material is applied. So this is that overall kind of aerial view. You can see here's that accent point with that warmer metallic color, and there's the second entry point right there. We're going to kind of continue to zoom in, Kathy, as we make our way through the presentation. And you can see kind of the masonry brick that kind of wraps the bottom, the darker hardy panel, and the lighter ephes color. So Jennifer, we know we're currently working on getting TEDS into the rendering. We know it's not there right now, but we couldn't get it in since yesterday. But we are working on it. So the package you will see on the 18th will have TEDS put back in. It is missing. We know it's supposed to go right about there, but it helps us kind of show the overall building for you. And the
Well, thank you.
mass.
Thank you for changing the rendering to more accurately show the context of the parking, et cetera, than what we saw.
Absolutely. And so what we've chosen to do as an overall, as you can kind of see from these images, is we have a very regular and rhythmic set of bays or bars on the building so that we can create courtyards and get natural light into the interiors of the buildings. And that is somewhat reminiscent of that rhythmic nature of kind of that original mill building. We also try to step back. So as we make our way up the hill, like Andy described from Eagleville, the building actually steps back. You can start to see right here, we have some lower levels, some smaller elements in between. Then we step up to about a 5-story building. And then on Eagleville Road, when we're 2 stories higher in elevation, it goes up another 2 stories. Similar on B, we actually step the building once as we kind of go up the hill of Ladoit. So just to kind of highlight some of the plan aspects of things, Eagleville Road is on the top of the page. King Hill Road will appear on the bottom of the page. So it's roughly north is to the top of the page. So facing Eagleville Road, We have Huskies relocated to this location. We also have an additional 2 retail locations that we can put Subway or any of the other tenants in there. Also, Core also operates a coffee shop that they may also put in there. And this is one of the elements that we have. So we have a smaller lobby on the lower level that actually just connects to the upper level as we make our way up. The upper level, as you can see here in red, is a very large space. It's about 8,500 square feet. And this is really kind of the heart and the activity of the building. This will have study spaces. It will have breakout spaces and lounge spaces. Potentially the coffee bar can exist up here, the bike storage. And it's meant to receive all the residents of it, as well as people from the outside, so that you're actually creating almost like a mini student union, in a sense, right at the base of this building to kind of create some activity. And as we start to make our way up, you can start to see the liner units that start to occur facing Eagleville Road. And along King Hill Road, what we're hoping to do is actually have a small drop-off space for students to pick up and drop off, as well as when we get into the later renderings, what we want to do is create a very large green buffer, because we have a very large parking requirement here. And so we have a lot of parking levels. So the backside of the building facing Eagleville Road has a 2-story piece that is basically a parking garage. So we are planning to use both the articulation of the masonry as well as some landscaping to try to shield that and give it a little bit more character. Just to
That's
jump
along
back,
King Hill.
that's along King Hill.
Right.
And to jump back, we also have all of our loading and trash is all done on site within the building. So actually the floor to floors on this lower level are high enough where the trash trucks can actually drive into the building and actually pick up the trash and then leave. So as we make our way up, the liner units continue on the 3rd floor. This is the last floor of parking. You can see we have a 2-story space in part of our lobby, to continue to kind of accentuate and welcome. And we get to the elevations and the renderings, we try to open up that elevation to kind of be a little bit more welcoming. And then as we make our way up, you can start to see we have these internal courtyards that have a series of terraces on them for some of the units as we make our way up.
And can you tell us if there's access from the units to that green space, to those, are those little light yellow areas, balconies? What's the access to the green space for the residents?
So the access to the green space is going to be a green roof. We're likely going to be using it for stormwater management. It'll likely not have much activity on it, but the what you identified as the yellow spaces, those are terraces, so that somebody can go out and there's a designated area for that unit to be able to go out and actually enjoy the exterior. They're not going to be able to walk on the actual roofing, the green portions. It's just to be kind of looked at, and we're using it also for stormwater management purposes.
Yep.
And then as we make our way up, this is the building starting to set back. There are going to be a few areas on that upper roof that we need to put small condenser units, roughly 3 to 4 feet tall, maybe about 10 per 8 to 10 per area, that actually service those lower liner units on the 2nd and the 3rd floor. We will screen them. We're going to do it on this level. We're actually going to do both a setback, a 1-to-1 setback from the property edge, as well as potentially put some screening around it, so that when you're looking out upon those areas, you will not be staring at a mechanical piece of equipment. And then we finally make it to the last level, where we actually have a very large amenity terrace, as well as a swimming pool and a small spa. There's also 2 indoor amenity rooms so that events can be held. And this is for the residents of the building. And then obviously on the top, we are going to have some green roof as well. And similarly, we have large fresh air units that will be screened. And then because those are roughly somewhere in the range of about 8 feet tall once you get them on the curb. And then all of the lower condenser units, we're going to actually do a 1-to-1 setback so that nothing will be visible from the street below. And so then this is some of the elevations as we've been kind of developing it. You originally remember we had the masonry, actually the top elevation is the Eagleville Road elevation. We've actually taken some of the comments into consideration that when we change function, we change material, things like that, that were coming from the zoning comments. And as you can see, the darker hardy panel pieces, we regularized the openings. And we actually, that variation within repetition that I talked about is actually in that warm gray ephes element, as you can start to see. So this is the Eagleville Road elevation. This is the elevation facing west, so Ted's would be in the foreground. This is our new entry canopy that we're proposing, as well as you can kind of see this vertical element of the building acting like a landmark.
I'm not seeing where you're pointing.
Oh, sorry. Right here.
Okay,
You
thank
see
you.
see
Yep.
number 2? Yeah.
I see it now.
So that is the side of this, if we look at drawing 4 at the bottom, which is kind of a vertical element that we propose to clad in this, you know, that warm kind of copper metallic paneling, as well as kind of the front entry, giving us that distinct, you know, welcoming entry point acknowledgement. We've also started to articulate some of the soffits or the parapets of the building as we make our way around, kind of reminiscent of some of the pitched roofs, the shed roofs, those types of things. This will also increase our ability to shield the mechanical systems that are up on the roof. And as you can kind of see, I can't zoom in because I'm in presentation mode, but this is kind of that idea of the variation within repetition, that we have repetitious elements that are in the building, but putting repetitious elements throughout the whole building, it didn't seem right. And to help break down the elevations, we chose to use the lighter gray colors to have some randomization in those windows. And again, these are some of the sections, just so you kind of understand the 3 levels of parking. The main lobby is actually on the 2nd level, which is on on King Hill Road, and the lower lobby is on Eagleville Road. And then all of the units are stacked above. Here you can see in the section the liner units that you saw on the 2nd and the 3rd floor, that large courtyard, as well as the buildings above. And so this is a view looking basically west from basically standing at the fire station. We lowered the masonry elements on the front. This is the garage entry to the building. That's the lobby entry. We actually did bring the brick up because the brick is actually coming around the building. So instead of stopping it at the corner, we actually chose to make the turn around the corner and bring that element, because the brick elevation on King Hill Road is up at the 3rd level. So this is our break, and we actually kind of come around the building from there. And then here's that back entrance looking at Eagleville, looking up at, King Hill Road. This is the entrance with that kind of very warm metal element, the winged canopy, as well as looking into the 2-story lobby and the entry point. This is that large wall that we had talked about that I referenced earlier, that is basically the parking garage. And we really don't want to open it up because, one, I don't want headlights, you know, pointing out and shooting at the, you know, the new science center that's across the way, as well as we think that we can play with the articulation of the masonry, that beautiful rhythm of a mill-esque type building, and then have the foreground kind of covered with some ornamental trees and some ground cover to make it a pleasant experience along Eagleville.
So I just point out on that rendering, although
Sure.
you corrected the parking in the other view, it's not corrected here.
Oh, you mean the adjacent
Yeah.
parking?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to get some plans of that. I apologize. We got to get the new plans from the science center.
So,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I have a question, just so this, yeah, because this rendering needs to accurately reflect actually what's there. And I can't remember, it's changed so much in the past year that I can't remember. Does it look, it doesn't look quite like this though.
Not at all.
I didn't think so. Yeah. Lots of, yeah.
Here, I actually pulled up the plan. I'm gonna go.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't look like this before and it doesn't look like it now after either. I mean, this
You're-
is, yeah,
You're talking about this one right here. So we tried to mimic that kind of curve parking lot that's there. It's fairly close to what is there because you can't see the science building beyond. Our site is right here. And so what we're seeing is roughly this small wedge of green space in the foreground. So if I kind of jump back, that's us trying to mimic that parking lot and that green space. We don't have the landscaping right. We can probably upgrade some of that. Potentially, maybe this distance isn't as large as we're illustrating, but it's fairly close. In this rendering, we wouldn't see the new science center. It's several hundred feet to the, to the left.
It's safe to say on record, you are showing in these renderings that we will not see any mechanical equipment popping up above the roof line all the way around the building, correct?
Correct. We do have some elevator overruns and things of that nature that, depending on your vantage point, this one you can see there's really nothing, and I'm probably floating about 30 feet in the air. So we're very confident that we're not going to be able to see any mechanics from ground level walking on the sidewalk.
Ryan, and you had mentioned earlier, there will be a couple of kind of mechanical units for fresh air and things on the roof that are bigger, but those will have an enclosure around them. All the condensers are, they're only 40 or so inches tall, so the parapet's real, and will enclose and separate them from visibility. Plus, they'll be set back away from the face of the building.
So, and then also your green roof. Are you looking at an extensive or intensive green roof? Are these plantings? What is this?
It's an extensive, later on, we'll get into a little bit more detail about the green roofs, and we'll show you the extent of those, the makeup, the plant types, those types of things. We have all of that in the presentation, but you're absolutely right. It's an extensive roof. It is not meant to be walked upon. It is meant to simply help us with stormwater management, slowing that water down, as well as creating something beautiful to look at. So all the roofs that units can look out upon are actually going to be green roofs. So I'm going to make my way to, I'm on the wrong. I'm going to make my way to building B, and a lot of these same concepts were reiterated. The shape of the site and the conditions and those types of things made for a different type of building massing, but we tried to employ the same design strategies, at least from an exterior skin and a massing standpoint. So as
Sorry,
you can
quickly,
see,
just quickly, I don't mean to interrupt, but what is your grids? What's your grid spacing between 4 and 5, for instance?
4 and
We're trying to get to the parking dimensions, what each stall is.
Oh, right now we're showing, I think they're center line to center line to get the 9'6". We had to have 33 feet. I think we were trying to get down to 32 feet, and we're working with the structural engineer. We're fairly early in the process to see if we can get that thing as tight as we can. But right now, our parking spots are the 9'6" by 19.
Right, but between the spaces, it's 28 foot 6 inches.
Yeah.
So each one is designed to accommodate 9'3", 9'3", 9'6", 9'6", 9'6" in each parking bay.
So it looks like you've provided us some more detail than what we saw earlier here at the face of the buildings, which I appreciate. Can you walk us through the dimensional change between the commercial space and North Eagleville?
Are you talking about from North Eagleville to the face of the building?
Yeah, and particularly where the commercial area is. I understand that on the east side of the building that ramp is going up another level, right? But what I don't understand is the difference in elevation between the road and the commercial space.
Right. So actually, what really pretty much lines up at a plus or minus 5% pitch is the drive lane to Eagleville Road. Eagleville Road pitches up as we go from left to right. And so as we make our way up, obviously, we're not changing the elevation of Eagleville Road or the curb. So we plan to put in a small water garden in the front, as well as a bus stop is one of the elements that we're putting in there. And that hopefully that this front terrace is roughly at about the same elevation as, you know, maybe about a 2 to 5% pitch up as the Eagleville Road in front of here. We then jump up. If I kind of go to the plan on the right, there's going to actually be a set of stairs and a small retaining wall that runs on the face of the ramp. And that will allow us to continue that grade to kind of climb up Eagleville Road to the east. And so there's going to be kind of a sharp fall that we plan to landscape in between those two elements. Does that help explain that?
Yeah, so both of the drives in front of the commercial area or those sidewalks are handicap accessible that you're showing now?
Correct. And in the elevation, it possibly it'll kind of show a little bit clearer exactly how that elevation change happens between the lower retail and the upper lobby space.
Yeah, I mean, you showed the slope and the ramp before, but this is more detail than I saw at least.
Which parking spots are handicap accessible?
So right now on the upper level, you can go, or on the lower level, you can see we have some handicap spaces right in here that are adjacent to the main elevator lobby right here. So this is on that ground floor, the entry level. So you can actually get to them there. We also distributed some handicap spaces also adjacent to the main building core right here on the second level of parking. So both sets of handicap parking spaces are the closest parking spot to the elevator core.
And are there some for the commercial space?
There are. Right now, we're currently working through, depending on those leases and what their requirements are for that, but the parking count of the total parking count accommodates for both the retail and the residential.
Thank you.
So as you can see, we're kind of on that lower level. That's that retail space in yellow. The remainder of it is basically below grade, and that's going to be our large amount of our mechanical spaces. The trash, similar to the other building, all trash and delivery trucks can actually pull in and maneuver within the parking garage. So, and then actually exit the building. So there's actually no maneuvering off the property. That's what you see right here. That's why this area got cut out. It's so that we could actually get a trash truck to come in and get to the actual trash room and the loading dock. Similar to building A, we have a very large lobby that, again, we can now open up to the public, coffee spaces, study spaces, breakout spaces, lounge spaces, kind of just a big, beautiful public room that we're offering right on the building. And then also, you know, the good part is we also almost like a front porch. You know, both buildings have this very generous landing out in front of the building so that, you know, interactions can happen throughout the space on that lower level. And as we make our way up, similar to building site A, there are 3 levels of parking, and then we make our way up to the residential units as we kind of make our way up the building. And then near the top, they actually set back, and I apologize, this white area should be hatched as a nice roof terrace for you, but that is our public amenity also on the roof of this building. There is an additional roof terrace similar to site A on this building.
Can you zoom in on the either side, left or right, the corridor? Where are the doors to the apartments off the corridor?
We can add them in, like, you know, I recognize we don't have them. That was one of their comments that they sent to us. we did the unit designs and all of those things, but again, we need to add that. And so by Friday, we'll have those doors located on all the plans.
Yeah, I noticed it's on a number of plans. It's not just this one.
Yeah. Here, there we go. So making our way through, and then we also have green roofs on both the upper and lower level. These roofs also similar to Site A. We're going to screen the large fresh air units, and we are going to also then set back and set them back. And then we're also going to set back all of the lower, smaller condenser units. And so here on this elevation, you can see we kind of employed the same window organization strategy, where in the darker hardy panel skins, they were very regularized windows stacked relative to the unit plans. And then in the kind of lighter warm gray components, we actually started to randomize them to get that variation within repetition. This building didn't have as much in and out, especially along the two sides, the one facing Ledoit and the one with the parking lot. So we chose to actually try to use that light and the dark elements to try to start to break up the massing of the building. Similar to Site A, we also kind of landed that warm metallic color right at the front door. And Kathy, this is, I'm going to exit again presentation mode for you. This is kind of how the grades are fleshing out. So you can see that's the retail space below. There's the stair, that's the handicap ramp, and that's the front porch.
And so those two garage doors, the one on the right goes to the first level, the one on the left goes up very steeply to the second level?
It doesn't go, we're actually, all the ramps inside the parking garage are roughly 5%, so they're not steep at all because we're parking on the ramp.
But on the left, I mean, is it correct that the left of those two garage doors goes directly up to the second level or not?
No, they both
Okay.
enter in. They both enter in right here. So this is more of like a loading dock and allows a loading or a trash truck to pull
I
out.
see.
This is a two-way entrance for the patrons and the residents.
I guess one thing, Brian, maybe it's not clear, is that
Yeah.
when you pull in, it's actually 2 stories to allow for the height of the trucks. So
Yeah.
there's a section and if, Brian, if you go to the second floor, you'll see that there's an area carved out to accommodate that height. I mean, on the
Oh, I
in
see.
the plan, it might be helpful.
Yeah, I see. Thank you. That's
Yeah,
helpful.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. The other garage, we actually just had more height on that first floor and we accommodated it that way because we had the retail, some big
Yep.
retail spaces, but this one we ended up having to carve that out.
Thank
Right.
you.
Thanks, Joe. All right. Okay, so again, here is the section of the building. We're starting to illustrate, the overall stacking of it. It is 5/2. These are some of the internal courtyards, and you can start to see the sections and the ramps. This is that retail space on that lower level. So it's actually a 2-story retail space. It's still just 1 story usually.
What are the floor to floor heights between lower level 2? Well, actually, I'm looking at level 1, 112 spaces. What is that between level 2 and level 1? That's
It's
11 feet.
11 feet.
Wow. And now you know that slab has to have a certain rating, right?
Yep.
For the parking versus that, and there's going to be a lot of structure in there.
Yeah, it is the transfer deck.
Okay, so that's going to be a low ceiling. Then you
It
got it
is.
stepping down there too for that extensive green roof.
We think we can still maintain we're aiming to maintain above 8'2" still on that level, but none of the handicap vans will be actually on that level. So the 2 lower levels are the actually 2 accessible levels that we talked about where the accessible parking is.
2:30 on Thursday. Were you late?
Okay.
I sent you that. I sent you that
I might as well just, well, I'll jump back to presentation mode for you. So again, here's the kind of the aerial looking east back towards the campus. Building B is on the left, building A is on the right. And you can see how we continue to start to articulate the building similar to the way we articulated it on site A. Both the regular and the variation within repetition. And this is that front entry again, showing the ramp and that front porch, the alcove for the entry, and that kind of that warm metallic element coming down to mark the front door.
Just orient me here, please, if you wouldn't mind. This
Sure.
is heading towards campus from King Hill Road, or is this?
This is actually, let me jump back a slide. If I were the standing point, I'm standing roughly in the middle of the road looking back at B. So I'm looking west.
Okay,
So this is, I'm looking east back towards the campus. You can see the campus off in the distance. And this is the other side of the building. So the firehouse is basically right here.
mhm.
And I'm looking back at the building, and building site A is in the foreground on your left. So that concludes me. I might have gone a little bit longer. I'm going to pass it off to, are you still on, Kristen?
Oh, I was actually going to start before
Oh,
Kristen
all right,
goes.
Yeah.
Rich.
We're teaming
All right.
up. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, just to give a quick reminder, Site B is to the north of North Eagleville Road, and Site A is to the south. We're going to start talking about Site A, if you want to jump to the next slide. And that's just the addresses, 125 North Eagleville Road and a couple parcels on King Hill Road. So the majority of the site is actually building. And as Brian has mentioned, we have the main entryway on North Eagleville Road on the very east part of the site. And that's going to be for most of your cars and all of your ambulance for emergency or trash pickup. But we also have a vehicle entrance on the southwest of the site. And that's only going to be car entryway. We have a car drop off down there as well as the fire lane that we have coordinated with Mansfield's fire department. We do have sidewalks and stairs available all around the site. Sorry, guys. Just for access to be able to cross here, just because in the existing site conditions, there were dirt paths and other ways for students to cut across here. So we're trying to keep that similar just to make it as easy as possible. We also added a crosswalk to the south of the site so that we could get to the new bus stop that was part of the project to the south of the site. You can jump to the next slide. We'll talk about more of that in a second. Now, our site is part of the Eagleville TMDL district. So we tried our best to make sure that we were implementing as much stormwater management features as possible to be sure that the water that empties into Eagleville Brook is as clean as possible. And the major way we're doing that is our green roof. But in addition to that, we do have a below grade detention system to allow for flows to decrease from the existing condition, as well as a water quality unit, just to be sure that we are cleaning the water as much as possible. We also have 4-foot deep and hooded catch basins, as well as French drains on the east and west of the site to allow for infiltration. And yeah.
And that's going to be very important, right?
Oh, definitely. And all this, all the pipes have been accurately sized. All the flows have decreased. We actually decreased all the flows in all the watersheds. We aimed for 21%, just because it is in the TMDL area, and part of the report on that is they are aiming for a 21% decrease in pavement area, and obviously that isn't 100% feasible in this case. So we shot for a 21% decrease in flows, just to kind of hit the lack of a better word, like point of the initiative. But yeah, and as you can see, our only discharge point is discharging into that Eagleville Brook. So we have that accurately rip-wrapped for flooding in Eagleville Brook, as well as accurately sized for the discharge from our stormwater system.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Mitchell, Senior Landscape Architect with Langen in Connecticut. I'm actually, two of my colleagues working on this are UConn graduates, so they graduated from the Landscape Architecture program. So just to walk through this Site A. So to the north, near Eagleville Brook, we collaborated with All Points Technology Corporation to come up with planting restoration area in this location. We also collaborated with them on all sheet notes and any directive for this restoration and maintenance. As we move around the site, just moving since we're to the north here, so we try to bring in a bit of curvilinear plantings, integrating these plantings are either shade or partial shade tolerant. Adding some trees and vegetation to add some of that height, and then to the south along King Hill Road, as Brian walked you through, in certain areas, in particular areas where there's more limited windows and it's more of a solid facade, we've integrated some sweet gum, some serviceberry, and then some more structured planting at the ground level to again break that up a bit. We have right near the drop off, which is in close proximity to the main entry, we've provided about a 10-foot, face a curb to facade, generous drop off area. And then as Brian walked you through in both Site A and Site B, providing that 10-foot area for all the movement for access of residents. So if we keep going. Here's just the two plant schedules integrated. We're also adding, if we go to the next slide, a plant schedule for green roof plant schedule. So this is right now to the upper right there. This is recently planted on Wesleyan University campus that we're working on. We've collaborated with the Green Grid roofs to come up with this mix, to come up with this this grid system. So they come in, 4 inches, they come in just 2.5 inches. So they have a variety of options there. You can see the gravel provides some circulation as necessary for just, maintenance and access. And then it was a combination of sedums and then really, working with these manufacturers to assure, we're integrated with the latest technology, the latest plantings, and the best plants for the Northeast and for the project specifically. If we keep going, on to Site B.
Yes. And also, I realized I jumped right in without introducing myself. I'm Richie Schlichting from Langen as well, part of the site civil team, working under Tim Underka, who is also on this call. All right. And then Site B, which is 134 North Eagleville Road. So similarly, a lot of the site is building. So again, we're going to have a lot of that clean water going right into our system, which is a good thing. On this site, it was a much more impervious site to begin with. So it was a little easier to decrease flows. But similarly to site A, we have the major entrance where we'll have our garage and ambulance, or trash and ambulance entrance, as well as our pedestrian entrance. But on this one, we only do have that one entrance. And then in the site, in the front and along the west and east, we allow for people just passing by. We have the sidewalk coming down the west side, straight across our site. That is all ADA. And we also have all of our entrances are ADA accessible. There are stairs for, shortcuts, but everything is ADA accessible, as mentioned earlier. And then our fire lane on this site, also coordinated with Mansfield, is in the upper right corner. Yeah, and we could go to the next one. Also very similar with the last site, we have our major green roof, as well as the 4-foot deep sump and hooded catch basins, another water quality unit that is used before going into the detention system to allow for cleaner runoff, and then the detention system to decrease those flows into the existing Eagle Brook discharge point. On the site, we also had room for a rain garden in the front of the site, which Kristen will get to a little bit more with the planting on that. But
can you just talk about that detention system a little bit? Is that inside the building? Is that in the parking area? What's going on there?
So it's actually below the building. Brian might be able to give you a little bit more detail on that.
It is. It's a pre-manufactured system that we worked pretty closely with Langdon on, but it will be below the slab on grade as you enter in to the parking garage.
Yes.
Sorry, Kathy, you're on mute.
Kathy, you're still on mute.
Kathy, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I think there's two detention, I mean, there's more than two detention areas, but I think you're talking about, so you're talking about this detention area below grade on the entrance, but there's the one that's in the building that's below grade because you're bringing the grade up. But it's above the parking inside of the building, correct?
Correct. The one in A is a detention tank. This one is actually below the slab. So you're right. One's above grade, one's below.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes. Brian. But yeah, and then also similarly, we have the perforated French drain just going along the northwestern corner and then down the side of the western part of the site, just to help with runoff going west and keeping it on site. And then I think we go on next slide. Yep.
Hi again. Yeah, so to just start off of North Eaglevale Road, so we have a combination there of some larger shade trees and then serviceberry, which are shown as some of those smaller circles. So the serviceberry kind of create a nice multi-stem, interest in the winter, and then a bit of an airiness when it actually has the leaves on them, nice native plant, adjacent to the rain garden, and then, kind of placed strategically along that facade there. Yes, thank you. And then to the east of the building, we have, I believe that was pin oaks. So we have a nice row of pin oaks in that initial corner, or sorry, to the east where you're pointing to the east side. Yeah, so we have the series running along the building facade there, about 10 pin oaks there in the corner. We have that, especially where that is a bit more solid, so creating a nice canopy and breaking up that architecture there. And then to the west side, some of that assuring that we're maintaining those existing mature trees that range anywhere in, 18-inch that are on the adjacent property. So looking at that tree protection, and then some, more just understory plantings with where we have a meadow mix and a mix there of plantings. That I think pretty much covers the planting design. If we could go to the next page. This again is just the combination of enhancement plant schedule, our detailed plan schedule that we include on our sheets. And then the green roof, same idea, similar to site A. So working to assure we have a great mix of plants that thrive in the Northeast, which we've done on a lot of recent projects with that, small lower profile, 4-inch profile.
So you have some very steep areas that you're planting. What are you
Yes.
planting on those? And how do you, I mean, we've all seen that runoff in other cases. How do you plan to maintain that?
So in many areas, we have tried to work towards a 3-to-1. So so where we could plant some trees, plant some larger vegetation to have that rooted in there. We then do have a meadow mix. So, working with the contractor to assure we've had successes on many other projects, and just, timing of planting, assuring we're not, placing that on major rain events that we've been seeing recently. But yes, working with the contractor to assure, and we have that, noted in specifications and on our drawings.
So what's the plant material on those steep slopes?
Let's go to site A. So we have this labeled as Meadow Mix A, which we have noted then if we plan to go to, actually we don't have this in the slideshow, but I can just list off. So it's a combination of native materials. It's a mix we've used on many campuses and many projects. So it's a combination of, I'm just gonna list off a few, but blue stem, some perennials, grasses, and again, a variety of native materials, but majority of that would be switchgrass and blue stem and some wild rye, Virginia wild rye. So that's located, just to be clear, on the west side of this building. Do you see that hatch right there? That's where that meadow mix that I was just describing, that's located there. In other places, they're individual planted, where you're seeing the other hatches, those are individually planted, either ground plantings, shrubs, and mainly shrubs that are listed in the plant schedule.
I have one question.
Yes.
There's a group of, this area that the parcel that is owned by UConn that you abut, it is my recollection is very mature trees. So how are you gonna protect those trees on the UConn property?
You're talking about this side right here?
Yeah, yep.
So we are noting, tree protection fencing that we would work, straight day one, assuring that, identifying some of those root zones, and working with the contractor day one to assure, we are protecting those trees.
Okay, great. And then also on the other UConn site across the street, you're doing something, the site, site A, you're doing this similar. Yeah. It's a similarly steep slope with mature trees, yeah.
Yeah, so all grading is obviously on the property line, is within the property boundary, impact outside of that. And then yes, we would need to, I think if we zoom in, there should be a protection fencing. If not, we can add that in this upcoming resubmission. I'm just zooming in a little bit.
Looks like you're taking down. Looks like you're taking down the 30-inch one there.
Yeah, so on the site that there's
And
the
the
20-inch and the 15 is what we have, that tree protection fencing in there. And then yes, on our site within the building footprint, there will be some removal.
Right.
And then what's not noted, just site lighting, we have the, there were some comments that came back, which were great. We're already modifying and we'll be having that in this upcoming submission. We'll have some modifications to assure, you know, and assured, you know, no light spilling onto, we're limiting and, or eliminating, you know, light spill onto adjacent properties.
Besides it, this whole project feeling pretty dense, very dense. I was reading the Weston and Sampson report, and I just want to be assured that you're going to address every one of those items that they have in their report, correct?
Correct.
We, as I said, I think before we started this meeting, we had a meeting with Weston and Sampson and the applicants, and the applicants will be submitting revised plans and comments, I believe, on Friday. So.
Correct.
And presumably those will address the comments we have yet to make.
Yes, we'll make sure that those are on the record. Whether or not the applicant team is able to address them by Friday is, that will be, we're not sure.
Yeah, and if we have an issue, we'll absolutely let you know that, hey, we're working on this one element, because I don't want to miss the 18th deadline. But if you make a comment today that we're not able to address in the next 3 days, we'll certainly let you know what we plan to do and at least write a narrative.
Well, I have one question about the plant materials. Because some of those plants will be planted under the building overhang, or some areas that might be a little bit shady.
Yeah, on the
So
north side, yeah.
Yeah, have you thought about the plant materials that might be shade tolerant, or would it be more like, you know, I understand that there's some meadow mix that might not be impacted greatly, but for the taller trees, are they shade tolerant?
Yeah, so you can see to the north. So to the, as you were mentioning, the meadow mix that's off to the west here. So that will receive with, you know, there just a couple of existing trees to remain. So that will get that sun, especially along King Hill Road. And then what we looked at to the north, again, collaborating on the enhancement plantings, and then yes, thinking through shade or partial shade planting options.
Yeah, they might be only for the ornamental trees. I don't know, but something that you can think about. And also because of the location, I know the Eagleville Road, Eagleville Brook is impaired streams. I know there is a really high concerns in terms of water quality. So I'm just wondering, I know somebody mentioned about the surface materials and the imperviousness versus perviousness. Have you ever thought about the trade-off between the increase of impervious cover versus the green cover that might be provided by the green roofs?
The impervious provided, sorry, could you repeat that last part for the group?
Sure, yeah,
Okay.
so you have green roofs, right? And
Yes.
in both buildings.
Yes.
And I know that's not intensive or extensive, so that you can have ground covers such as sedums and other species, which might be helpful for runoff that will eventually be going through the areas to the Eagleville theme, right? So and at the same time, you're building. I mean, we are establishing a building which will increase the imperviousness, right?
Yeah.
And so
the
have you
green
ever
roofs,
calculated the trade-offs?
so the green roofs, I mean, really the intention was to both from an aesthetic purpose, from, as you mentioned, reduction in impervious surfaces, you know, also heat island reduction. So that is a green space. So having that more natural material. And then, yeah, from a treatment standpoint, then, what's the outflow rather than, just improvement there. So really we thought about it from multiple ideas there. Does that answer that? Or so that was the thinking and the extent. And as you saw, patios or just areas to come out of their units, looking onto that green roof, then looking out, onto then the green trees beyond. So it's really that both aesthetic and then, function.
Yeah, there are many buildings with the green roofs already on the campus. One is in the nursing building, which is oddly not accessible by the student. But I'm wondering if that's accessible by the people who might be living in the building, but also from the outside, the student.
I think, Brian, it is accessible from the people living in the building, and then visually from above looking down to, or from, looking out at the same level.
Yeah, it's our green roofs on our buildings are visually accessible by the residents. We don't plan to allow them to walk on them or to conduct any activity on them. They're simply foreground, or really just giving us some green within the foreground of the.
How do you maintain them? How do you maintain those?
We have, like, for instance, that picture we were showing, there is integrated irrigation system. It's pretty, actually, the whole idea, the intent is that they're limited maintenance. The access, you can see, for instance, just on this side here, on the upper right, having that like aggregate path. So I was just walking on it the other day. So there's that access in the center and on the edges with the gravel. And then otherwise the planting really is intended to be that low maintenance. You can see, I think it might be in the brochure there. So you can have irrigation lines directly beneath and within the modules. So they're integrated into the system. So again, it's really, the whole idea is the hands-off ease of maintenance.
I would definitely, instead of using the word could, I would definitely, be more assured if you thought about that, because I've done a number of schools in the state where if the maintenance isn't a part of this, whether it's intensive or extensive, you still have to think about it, because the last thing you want is nothing growing and it becomes, an awful eyesore out there and a fire hazard. So I would definitely consider that. I think it's a great idea. I love green roofs, but you just have to make sure you fold that maintenance component in.
So is there any sort of maintenance plan that was submitted, Kristen?
I don't believe we included the notes. It's something we could note on here.
I would absolutely do that, and then make sure it's kind of called out.
Oh, my apologies. We do have landscape maintenance notes in here, and we do note during construction, lawn maintenance, but we could add a few notes for the green roof itself, which that we could add and take note of.
And sometimes as a condition of approval, we've done like a maintenance point, like you would have to maintain it for, show that it's being maintained for a certain number of years, similar to what we did for like the restoration and the wetlands permit. So, or for site A when that was approved, but we can talk about that offline.
Okay. But in the meantime, for this upcoming submission, we can add a few notes related to the green roof specific maintenance. Perfect. Yep.
Well, another question that I have, maybe this question might not be for the applicant, maybe to the town folks as well, but is there any kind of a due process for the buildings with underground parking in terms of safety and soil conditions and things like that?
Well, they're going to have to get a building permit, and that will be, and I'm sure maybe Langan can talk about your geotechnical. I'm sure you've had to do that to determine that you can have a parking garage. So, but that will come in under the building department in terms of making sure that that's correct. But
one thing I would want to say too is, like, on the exterior of the building, make sure the transitions between these materials, any reveals, any details, any flashing, you got to pay attention to those because we don't want this thing to leak after right when it opens. So just pay attention to the transitions between these different types of materials. Because I know these systems have a different sequencing and a different way of putting things up. So I'm sure you're going to pay attention to that, but I would just reiterate that again.
Thank you. Yes, it's high on our priority list.
Yeah, and Jennifer, this is Eric to speak to your comment about the soil borings. We certainly have done those, and we're confident in the design there. We'll be doing more as we progress, but we're confident that we can build the structure as proposed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be here, I would hope.
Yeah. So, shall we make some general comments now? Jeff, do you want to start? Jeff, do you want to start?
And then also if we could get it, I just want to make sure I've captured everything for my notes, but so some general comments and then just kind of a summary. So.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kathy, you can start.
Okay, well, first of all, I'll say that, this is the right place in town for a big apartment building. So, it makes a lot of sense to put a lot of units here. And that's a good thing. I think that the massing of the building at a large scale is really interesting. It's nice, as handling the water on this is an amazing feat, and being able to do it the way you've done it, seems to add some things to the project. I like that you maintain some commercial uses on Eagleville. So there's a lot of things to recommend it. I like the Silvetti-esque window layout, Silvetti Mineo that you've done. There's some interesting things. On the other hand, I think there are some serious things that still need to be addressed at the design, and those happen at the ground level. Can you go back to the elevations? So all of the renderings you showed us are from an upper view. And for those of us who aren't birds, we'll never see the building from those views. We'll see them at the street level. And I think there should be renderings on all of the buildings at the street level. I think that the trees obscure the street level in almost everything you've done. And that's the most important thing to the community, is how the buildings look at the street level. I think you've made a little bit of progress on the Eagleville Road commercial here, but it still doesn't read as a commercial entrance. And the majority of the space along the ground on all of these buildings, if you walk around, is either a blank wall or a very, very steep slope leading up to the first level. I am very skeptical about the maintenance of materials, although I'm far from the expert on that and that steep of planting area. And so, I'd like to see further studies. If you look at all of these walking on the ground level, you'll see that only at the little bit of commercial space are you looking, this is building A, at anything. The rest you're seeing either a steep slope going up or a blank wall. If you go to building B, again, little bits of things, but mainly you're looking at either that's very steep slope or a blank wall. So I think that there's a way to articulate that better at the ground level, whether it's, arbors with planting, whether it's really studying the steepness of that hill and how it's planted and how it's maintained. And Sun Yan might want to comment more on that, and that I think more articulation of the commercial space, clearer sense of where that entrance is. You mentioned that you're changing. I think you brought the red brick up at the apartment building entrance, but is there something similar to do at the commercial entrances? You want to have clear views of those as both pedestrians and traffic goes down Eagleville to see the commercial space, to see the windows. I think gridding commercial windows might not be the best thing to do. there may be ways to make them more real commercial entrances, moving some of the trees away from those entrances actually, so that, not that you don't want any trees, but now I think it makes it hard, and commercial space doesn't thrive if it doesn't have clear, commercial views, and it doesn't feel comfortable going in. I am skeptical about the placement of the bike parking. That seems really hard to get to and out. And, I think I'd be tempted to, do something different with my bike. And if the great thing about having housing here is people should be able to use bikes 100%, and moving that closer to the entrances, going, I think would be really helpful. The pool is a nice amenity. I think people will be happy to see that. It's lovely up on the roof. I'm wondering if there can't be some more shade and green space articulated around that, to make it a more attractive space. It would also be nice to see some places that people can go outside. I like the little decks, and for the people who have those are great, but not everybody has them. And some green outside space would be nice. Some, articulation of where benches might go near pickup or whatever that people would use. As you solve the ADA issues on the discontinuity of the sidewalks, I think it's important that that pickup function be worked into it. I'm just looking through my notes. Again, this interior storage is a good thing to do. I again wonder if that can't be pushed back to get something more interesting along the facade. Mechanical spaces lead to some of these blank walls down lower in the building. And I think all of us, for resilience, et cetera, have thought about moving mechanical spaces, up and more into the interior. I think that might be a successful use. EFS is challenging as a material. I'm happy to hear that you're thinking about some articulation of the top of the building in some way. I would hope that there might be other opportunities for articulation in terms of canopies or window insets or things. I think the changes you've made from the first plans that were circulated to us to these, break the building up better. Again, I think that still needs to extend to the first and ground, all of the ground levels. So that's my summary.
Can I make sure that I've captured this?
Sure.
So the positives: right place in town for a large apartment complex, that you're like the massing, you find it interesting. The green roof and stormwater management, you think is a very positive thing, and you're supportive of how they've attempted to maintain the existing businesses. And then, but you have concerns regarding the ground level, the street level renderings. You want to, because you think that those are the most important to the community, and you don't want folks, when they're walking by, just to see a blank wall and steep slopes.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you would like them to articulate the commercial entrances on Eagleville Road, so that folks really understand that there is, in fact, a business. Gridding of the windows, like allowing people to see in. There's maintenance of the materials. Could you, I have a blank there. I wasn't sure what you were talking about.
So I think that the planting on that steep of slopes that occurs in several places on the project is problematic at best. And so I would like to see a more extensive study of how that's done, or perhaps an alternate solution to that. I also think that the bike parking is not well located in the interior of the building. It would be nice to move that more to the outside, and it might be good to move more of the mechanical spaces into the interior of the building to again allow more perforation of the ground level of the building and active use of the ground level. You know, wouldn't it be nice to have some windows into the bike parking? And I didn't mention this before, but some of the interior corner units have limited light. That's always a hard design problem to deal with interior corners, and you have a lot of them. In some places, it's solved better than in others.
Okay, and then articulate some shade and green space around the pool, move place more, you'd like to see more places where people can gather, more detail on like outdoor furniture, benches. I think that's it.
With particular emphasis on the, the pickup drop-off function of the buildings. And it looks like they're going to have to do some reworking of the sidewalks to meet ADA, and, particularly when that's done, to consider the pickup drop-off function that's important to all of us, but particularly people with mobility issues.
Okay. All right.
Challenges.
All right. Next. Jeff, do you want to go?
Yeah, I think I sense where Kathy's going with this sort of lower section. If you look at the north elevation there that's open, it's just this big blank facade. I don't know if that's on the street side, but if you go around the building, maybe there's a way to do something a little bit better there, especially, along some of the major roads. So it's definitely worth looking at. The only other thing I was thinking too is that mechanically, is this going to be heat pumps? What is this? What are you planning on? Is there any sort of solar? Have you considered any other kind of sustainable kind of heating, cooling strategies, or are these heat pumps? What are you planning on doing?
So currently it's kind of a dual system. The main fresh air of the system is through a DOAS. And so we're going to actually duct that from 2 units up on the roof, down through the corridors and into each unit. Then each unit has exactly what you said, which is a heat pump system. Our DOAS units, we actually take the exhaust air and it goes back through the DOAS unit, so we can get recovery units and things of that nature on there. So we're actually, the DOAS and coupled with the heat pump gives us a great efficiency. It cuts down on air interchanges between units. So passing of pathogens has been a big issue over the last couple of years. So this seems to be probably the most economical as well as the best system to install in a multi-family.
Do you have an estimate about how many heat pumps? I know you can bulk up units per.
We're not doing VRF, so it's going to be straight 1-to-1.
Okay.
So we're just going to do straight heat pumps. It'll be a 1-to-1. Some of the smaller units can be stacked, but for the most part, it's going to be 1-to-1. So every unit, there'll be a small condenser on the roof.
Okay. And that's in that area you showed me in the dotted square. Those are where those are going to go. Okay.
Correct.
And you won't see those from the road anywhere.
Nope.
Good.
Nope.
Can you spell? I don't know what a DOAS is.
Direct outside air system.
Yeah, dedicated outside air system. Yep.
Dedicated direct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's fresh air into the building. And then make sure you get the doors on all the units on the upper levels.
Absolutely.
And any windows that are missing.
Absolutely.
And I like the way you've sort of used the materials to break up the things. I would equally be concerned a little bit about the ephes, but I mean, I know what you're up against. You got to maximize everything you can maximize, and then not have a flat facade. And you're going to use material, light and dark and textures to sort of break it up. So I get it. It's just, and I know I mentioned it, but the transitions are going to be critical.
Absolutely. I mean, the goal for us when it comes to the waterproofing, I'd love to have the substrate of all of that material be continuous. And then we have our fluid applied air barrier on that and everything's built out from it.
Mhm.
There are downsides to EFIS, but just to clarify, we're using a drainable EFIS system. So it's similar to like a brick cavity wall where it actually can weep. So we don't
Okay.
have condensation and all the things that you've heard EFIS, over the last 15 years. The other thing is we also get that continuous insulation quality, right? So we can actually create a greater performance on the building by actually using EFIS. We can get, I think we're going to get an R11 or something just in continuous insulation. That's not including the remainder of the assembly. So
I can't wait to I can't wait to see a fitness center in some of these buildings where the students themselves actually exercise and they're generating power and electricity for the
I
building.
don't know, Andy, is that something we could do? We get the pedal bikes and they're all just, powers a couple workstations in the lobby.
Anyway, that's all I had. Thank you.
I think I was able to,
You can leave out the pedaling bike part.
Right.
yeah, I'll leave that one out. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was your suggestion. All right, how about So Young? Can you chime in?
Sure. There are a lot of overlap with what the previous speaker said, but I think this is a good location for the redevelopment, and it's gonna be busy street with pedestrian and maybe an opportunity to drive more human traffic. So I think it's good in terms of the location and the nature of the development. I'd like to see a little bit more explanation and visuals in terms of connectivity to surrounding domes to the north side of the area. And then because there's a big, dome structures and complexes to the north side. And also to the south, there is a the new science buildings, as we all know, so that maybe to the north and south, it's going to be really good circulation path if you design the pathways, the layout within the site and also nearby areas as well, and also to other parts of the campus as well, obviously. Someone talked about the common space. I would like to see the renders for the interior amenity if possible, so that we can imagine what those common spaces should look like. At the same time, maybe like Kathy said, some provision of outdoor common space as well. So people not only gather inside, but also gather outside when the weather is good. And that will actually be a good opportunity for the students who are living outside of the complex can actually gather together there too. In terms of plant materials, I love the idea that you would like to incorporate the meadow mix because I love the pollinators and all that. I would like to see a little bit more details in terms of the specific species and their performance in terms of the benefits to the ecosystem, site ecosystems and site habitats. And that kind of things will actually provide the future student with the exposure to more nature. And then it will be another asset that they might appreciate. So a little bit more details in terms of natives versus non-natives versus ornamental, and also the consideration between the existing and new plants, where those new and existing plants will be situated. And I also suggest to you to preserve as many native trees as possible on the ground. And also a little bit more details about what the species can do in terms of a shade, wildlife friendly, for water quality and stormwater runoff, because that's such an important location just within the TMDL areas. So anything that's happening within those TMDL watershed should impact on the impaired streams eventually. So I want you to, think twice and more to think about the natural materials that will be kind of offset with some downside of the development, given the magnitude of the development there. Let's
Can
see
I
if there's
interrupt
anything.
just one
Sure.
second, just so I can
Yeah, sure.
understand?
Sure.
So we have included in terms of, for instance, the meadow mix, we have included the materials and, or the species and the quantity, you know, the kind of the percentages in response to that request about just, you know, the plant materials in general, the species, the shade, the and relationship to kind of the existing materials around it, and then pollinators. Is it like a chart you'd like to see, or how would that how would you like to see that, or how would you like that be responded?
I think the meadow mix that you are proposing on the west side of the area will provide those functions anyway. I think it need to be a little bit articulated in your report, visually or in text, so that people can understand those benefits.
Okay, so in
yeah.
response,
Yeah, in
to the
response to-
comment. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. I just want to make sure we're nailing it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and yeah, okay, you're welcome. And also green roofs, I think that's a really nice idea. It's bad that people cannot actually access to it, but at least visually it will help to have some kind of green on the building structures. Again, you may find some best practices that are happening already on the campus, so that you might have some kind of you know, consistency in terms of specialists. And you may also think about those meadow specialists even on the roof, in addition to the ground cover, because that will be really good for the stormwater management and other environmental functions. In terms of landscape plans, I'd like to see a little bit more clarity in terms of labels and annotation. For example, if you are saying the what was it? The basin, can you just help me recognize
the rain gardens. So we have that exact species and the quantity labeled in there, and the spacing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So we
and
have,
also
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and so we had the quantities, the sizes, the spacing, each labeled, and then in each location. So what you're seeing right here, we just took off the notes in all of our submitted site plans. We have the exact, every single hatch that has a arrow pointed to it with a number and with a call out that relates to the schedule. I think just this slide, we just removed it so it wasn't so cluttered, but in the actual submission and the resubmission, it has that. Yep.
Yeah, okay. So maybe detention basin, maybe you can clarify if that's a detention tank or vegetative detention pond, or, you know, just a little bit more clarity on the legend on the plan. So that was it.
Just looking at that there, I'm sorry, are there any questions for her before I jump in? So in the picture you just showed, again, the trees kind of block the commercial space there. I think that's worth thinking about. We spend a lot of time in commercial, you know, making sure that there's clear views into the property. So it's worth thinking about. I think, Jennifer, going back to your notes about my comments, I'm not sure. One of the things I said that I think that there needs to be more texture to the exterior walls that might be done. It was mentioned that cornices were being added. That might help with that. I see that there's been work in extending the red brick up and maybe extending the roof there, continuing with that. But there might also be more texture to the window openings with, you know, more detail around those openings to give them more texture, maybe articulating the different exposures so that, you know, you have one kind of way that you express the south side of the building and the shading needed, and a different on the west, east, or whatever. That again, I think there's been significant progress since the drawings we saw here. I'd hope that it continue.
I will add that to my, and I'm gonna, for the design review panel members, I'm gonna type this up, and please make sure that I've captured everything.
Thank you, and sorry, I know I go fast.
No, it's okay. Some of these terms are new for me. I have one question, and I wanted to know what the panel thought about this in terms of, you know, in other projects, we've asked them to add sort of an educational component, and this is so close to the campus, and the fact that you are using these low impact development techniques. And is there, so yeah, I'd love your perspective on if there's a way to kind of interpret some of this to make it consistent with some of the campus signage, or I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a several locations where we apply green infrastructure features and low impact development. And there's one new things going on near my building, agricultural building, which is on the side of dairy bar, where you can see the deep, slope near the hill there. And so I think it'll be interesting if we can put some signage on at least a small rain garden there. It does not necessarily very fancy, just a little wooded sign that people can understand how that little garden will work. And that can be perceived as part of the campus-wide green infrastructure network, and also the education component that you said, Jennifer.
Yeah, I mean, that's all throughout the campus, and it just has to be some sort of like acknowledgement, I think. And it just is nice and makes it kind of tie in with the campus, given that this is so close.
Right, I agree, yes.
Okay. Anything else for, we've gone longer than we usually do. So anything else for the applicants? Any other questions from the applicants to the panel?
No, I think, thank you. But I think we have a lot to digest, and obviously copy us, Jennifer, on the comments, and we'll
You'll
get right
definitely
to work.
get those. Yeah, it's going to take me a minute to type this up, but I will do my best.
And thank you very much. And thank you for the presentation. And, I think we'd like to express our condolences to Newman for the loss of Herb Newman.
Well, thank you very much for that recognition. It's been a tough week for us, but we're remembering him.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you all. I will be in touch with my notes, and for the Wilmerite Hub applicant team, I am still trying to get in touch with Jeff Santa Cruz from Weston and Sampson, and I have not heard from him yet, so that we can have a meeting to kind of review his comments. But I did reach out to the project manager, Joe Perugini, and he's also trying to get in touch with him. So I'm not quite sure what's happening, but I will keep you posted.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, maybe Jennifer, if we can't get a meeting set up with the consultant prior to Friday, maybe we could just review those with you at least, and make sure we're all on the same page, so we can try and get a concise response back.
Yeah, okay. I will I'll be in touch about that. All right, so I'm gonna adjourn the meeting at 12:46, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a
Take
good
care.
day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.